This is the Mules Rider Chronicles podcast, episode 12, The Great Beef Shortage of 1971. Hello out there, friends, and welcome to the Mules Rider Chronicles podcast. I am Craig Marlette, the Mules Rider, and the stories you will hear on this broadcast are from my own journey as I traverse the planet on my search for the meaning of life. Today's story takes us back to 1971 when there was a growing beef shortage in America, and being addicted at the time to Big Macs, some band buddies and I decided to do something about it to make sure we had a stash of red meat stored up in case things got even worse. Hear what happens when my brother Terry's friend Ray and I visit a nearby pasture to see if we could find any volunteer cows that wanted to spend the summer in my brother Bruce's freezer. So hop up here on my old mule. Let's go back and visit the Great Beef Shortage of 1971.
We've all had traumatic periods and events difficult to revisit whenever we find ourselves looking backward through life. The loss of a loved one, a failed relationship, the day your children moved out of the house for the first time.
Yahoo!
Well, maybe not that one. Difficult family experiences, etc. When you've had a zany life like mine, there are so many opportunities to look back and remember it's difficult to know which ones were the toughest to get through. For me, the beef shortage of 1971 was devastating. To those of us back then who played rock and roll music for a living, this period could still bring a cold shiver in the middle of the night. When you rely upon the Big Mac for daily sustenance, worrying about the price changes of beef, or in fact a life without it, can be severely trying. Having just spent a week in an Adventist hospital, I knew what I was up against that year, and just doing nothing about it was out of the question. My youngest brother Bruce and his wife Lynn had a home far enough away from the city that we could hold our band practices there without causing too much neighborhood disturbance. Back then, being good was important, but being loud was critical. If the cops didn't come twice a week to shut you down, you weren't considered a real rock band.
We got some noise complaints here. You boys are going to have to hold it down.
I played guitar. My brother Terry was on the bass, flute, and fiddle. Gary Mathis played guitar and keyboards, and our drummer at the time was a guy named Wes, who went by the nickname Lumpy. The band had been together for a couple of years, playing mostly in D.C. and Boston, and Lumpy was about to settle down and leave the starving musician life behind. He had married a girl he met while we were playing in Boston, and she was not about to put up with the life of being a band wife. It was time to settle down, and Wes took off to greener pastures, literally. He got a job working with a large farming company, and to my knowledge he's still there today. I guess them Boston girls sure can put the old settle down on you when they want to.
I am so sure.
Someone once said, if you can remember the 60s, they weren't that good to you. Though that may be true for some, for us the 60s were like rehearsal time, and the 70s became the real party. Like most other rock bands in that time, we lived on a steady diet of pot, psychedelics, and Ripple. Having moved back to Florida, we were now avidly pursuing the recently discovered benefit of the Florida psilocybin mushroom, and since they were free wherever you could find a herd of Black Angus cows, this seemed to fit well with our current unemployed status. And we were thankful for any assistance we could get from nature in that area. My brother Terry had a close friend named Ray, who was a big 6'2" country boy with curly dark red hair and freckles, and weighing in at about 250 pounds. Ray could have gotten the part of Jethro on the Beverly Hillbillies, had he ever screen tested for it. He could eat like a bear and was game for anything that he thought might be fun or challenging. The fact that he could open beer bottles all night using only his teeth didn't hurt his potential for fitting in either.
Nutty as a fruitcake.
Ray was a country bumpkin who loved the Jimi Hendrix crowd. To see Terry and Ray together was reminiscent of Spike and Mike, the bulldog and the mouse in the old Looney Tune cartoon series. And if you were ever in the vicinity when Terry used the words, "I dare you," to Ray, you knew things were getting ready to happen. Like the time Terry challenged Ray to an eating contest at the local buffet restaurant. In the early 70s, buffets were the new trend, and we had one in Orlando called the Painted Horse. It was mostly frequented by senior citizens, and the big sign out front read, "All-you-can-eat Swedish buffet, $1.99. This was too much of an opportunity for Terry, so he challenged Ray to a nonstop eating fest where the loser pays. Terry, of course, conveniently left his wallet at home that day, so regardless of the outcome, Ray would be footing the bill. Still, Ray was up to the challenge, and all things considered, with the beef shortage happening, he knew he would be getting his money's worth either way. They decided to get an early start on dinner, so into the Painted Horse they went, where they quickly located a booth that was close to the buffet steam tables. Now at the time, Terry was in his Columbo period, and wherever he went he wore a long trench coat, a scruffy shirt and tie, and spoke in the exact voice and style of Detective Columbo from the popular television series.
I had no idea.
He was a great impersonator, and growing up, we never knew who he would choose to be next. Ray, on the other hand, would have worn a checkered short-sleeved cowboy-style shirt open for 3 or 4 buttons to reveal his chest hair, and with his sleeves rolled up tightly around his bulging, muscular biceps. This outfit would be embellished by Levi jeans and cowboy boots, and finished off by a big shiny belt buckle that had a marijuana leaf molded into silver, giving him the appearance of a Haight-Ashbury version of Little Abner. I still feel sorry for the shift manager of the Painted Horse that day. He probably began writing his resignation as soon as he saw those two enter the front doors headed for the buffet table.
Oh, no!
To make a long story short, after about 7 or 8 tours of the entire buffet line, Ray looked at Terry and said, "Hey, man, I'm starting to break out in a cold sweat." At which point he jumped up and made a dash for the restroom, but it was already too late. Ray slipped on the rug and did a flying belly flop right in front of the buffet island, landing in the middle of several diners who were preparing their dinner plates. Regurgitating the entire 8-course meal he had just consumed, he then lay face up in the mess, waving his arms like a snow angel and moaning in a loud voice, "I don't feel so good. Oh, I don't feel so good." This, of course, brought no sympathy from the manager, who immediately escorted them from the premises, warning them never to return again or the police would be called. Of course, during the excitement of it all, they were never presented with a bill, making their experience twice as noteworthy from their point of view. To get back to the beef shortage of 71, though, one night we had just finished jamming, which is like a rehearsal with friends watching, and my brother Bruce, Gary, Ray, and I decided to go out and get some beer. Bruce's house was right near where the big University of Central Florida is now, but back then it was a small school, and there were still a few cow pastures where the shopping centers are now. As we passed by the fields of cattle, I got the bright idea that we should kill a cow and thus avoid the beef shortage, at least for a while. We stopped near the pasture and looked the herd over, but not being cattle people, we weren't sure where to start. In the end, we picked the biggest one in the bunch, a large Brahman that kind of looked like he was asleep standing up. It seemed like a good choice that offered the least resistance, and from the distance we could easily tell it was the biggest one in the herd. We went back to Bruce's house to devise our strategy. After a few joints and finishing off the beer, we concluded our plan was fine-tuned enough and got ready to head out. We then went to Ray's car trunk to get the necessary tools for the job, then hopped into my Econoline van so we'd have a big enough vehicle to get the beef back home after the job was done. My sister Penny had left one of her Glenn Turner Dare to Be Great tapes in my van, so we listened on the way to the pasture, and by the time we arrived, we all had a positive mental attitude and could already smell the T-bones cooking on the grill. We told the women to get the baked potatoes going, as we would be back soon with plenty of red meat. The plan went something like this. We would drive down to the pasture and leave the car out of sight so the cows wouldn't be aroused and become spooked. Then Ray, who was a framing carpenter when he was sober and knew how to use a hammer, would hit the big cow between the eyes with his 24-ounce Estwing hammer. As the cow went down, my job was to cut its throat with Ray's big hunting knife, and then we would load it into the van and head back to the house for some barbecue. It all seemed simple enough, and we gave each other 5 and headed out to the pasture. We're a Cheech and Chong when you need them. By the time we got there, our pick of the herd had drifted out toward the middle of the field, which meant a longer trek back to the van after the kill. But what the heck, we had Ray, and he could lift anything. Our spirits were not damaged by this small problem, and we jumped the fence and walked across the field toward our future rib roast. Just as we suspected, the cow was asleep standing up. Though now, upon looking down below, we quickly ascertained that our cow was, in fact, a bull. A very large bull. The largest bull I'd ever seen, made even bigger by the state we were in. Unperturbed, Ray drew back like the babe and hit that bull right straight between the eyeballs, and then just jumped back to get out of the way. That one swing would have driven a railroad spike through a steel beam, but the bull only shook his head wildly, let out the most ungodly cry of hatred you could ever imagine, and came straight at Ray and me, already running as fast as we could in two different directions. I ran straight for a big camphor tree and got there just in time to grab a branch and climb it like a monkey with a jaguar on his tail, just before the raging bull got to me. In the distance, I could see Ray's predicament was no better, having crashed headlong into the barbed wire fence, and in the process of trying to get over it, he had ripped his pants off and fell safely onto the other side. We managed to get back to the house just as my brother Larry was pulling into the driveway. "What the heck happened to you guys?" Larry asked. "How'd you tear up your pants, Ray?" After we briefed him on the whole incident, he asked how we had ever planned to get that bull into the van, seeing that from our description he probably weighed a couple 1,000 pounds or more. "We hadn't got that far in our planning yet," I told him. "We figured we'd just play it by ear, having never done this before." It goes without saying that we had no barbecue that night. Lucky for us, we had plenty of painkillers, and the beef shortage thing sort of disappeared into the insanity of our everyday lives. It's often said that, if you're going to be dumb, you got to be tough. Sure wish someone had told us that back then. Oh well, I guess it's learn as you go sometimes. Ray died in his 40s after a hard and fast life filled with more bad choices, adding credence to the idea that the faster you go in life, the shorter the trip.
I think you're onto something, son.
The Painted Horse Swedish Buffet closed a long time ago. I heard the manager went back to Sweden and now hosts a television cooking show where the studio audience is screened for safety before being let in.
Men jag vill också testa en liten annan variant här. Jag har en het panna. Jag får hookade spågar. Här hittade jag en...
I'm not really sure what happened to the bull, but I would have hated to be the next human that ran across his path after that night, especially if he was a carpenter. I did hear that it went wild for a while and wouldn't let anyone in the field again to make fence repairs. I suspect he didn't have much of an affinity for hammers after that night. Looking back now, I wonder sometimes if God didn't use our lives back then for television sitcoms in heaven. I'm sure that if he did, The Great Beef Shortage of 1971 is one of the more popular reruns when people and angels up there need a good laugh. For us, it's Lucy or Green Acres. For them, maybe it's Us. My brother Bruce has gone to be with the Lord, having passed away in 1979 after a long battle with Hodgkin's lymphoma. The 5-year fight with Hodgkin's brought him face to face with God, and he made his peace before going home. Terry now lives in Michigan, where he still plays in a band and also continues to be a regular at the local buffet restaurants there. He married a girl who is a trained psychological counselor, which we all thought was probably a good move. Gary moved to Pennsylvania, where he now spends most of his time among the Amish people who aren't known for doing stupid things like hitting bulls with hammers. He has a much safer life and decided that having a few states between him and the rest of us would act as sort of a buffer zone against any insane ideas that might pop up. My brother Larry has retired now and decided to leave all such insanity behind him long ago, having distanced himself from those days as much as possible. Being a little older and wiser than the rest of us, he squints whenever I tell him of any upcoming adventures I might have in mind. Too bad, though. There's an oil shortage going on right now, and I saw this tanker truck right down the street from here that... Oh well, I guess we'll have to wait for the reruns to see what happens.
Well, thanks for joining me today for my story about the Great Beef Shortage. I hope any of you vegans out there aren't lining up to throw darts at a target with my face on it. After all, in case you don't remember, the old bull was the real winner that day. Anyway, if you like my stories, be sure to tell all your friends about the podcast. Maybe they will take a ride on the old mule too. The Mules Rider Chronicles podcast can be found in the iTunes Store, on Facebook, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn, and YouTube. You can subscribe for free when you visit any of those sites and listen to the show. So until next week, goodbye.